Good morning, class. Today I want to talk to you about Nat Chi Chi Rides. It's an organization, it's a nonprofit organization that's based in Winnipeg. Okay. So the problem they were having is the lack of safe transportation in Winnipeg for First Nation people. And so the solution, Pernell Fayette, after he had heard, he's just a normal citizen, just like you and me. Um, After he had heard countless stories about women being sexually harassed and refused transportation by racist taxi drivers, um, he had had enough. So he started a carpooling Facebook page where First Nation, it says women, but it's like anyone, it's First Nation people, could get a ride with other First Nation people. So it's just like a carpooling system. So he'll be like, okay, and they'll be like, okay, like I need to go to the grocery store, and he'll be okay, perfect. He'll pick them up, drive them to the grocery store, bring them back, blah blah blah. So the First Nation people that were getting their rides, they would pitch in some money for gas, so he wasn't losing any money. But any of the money that any donations he would get or any of that stuff, he would just put right back into the community. So like if he got a donation of $10, he'd go find a homeless man, go buy him some coffee or go buy him a meal. So he wouldn't keep any of that money, besides enough money to keep the organization alive and going. Okay. Some successes and failures he'd had. So some failures he had was he wanted to get his taxi license because then he could go and he could start charging people and be making a little bit of money um, for his service. But there was too many rules in the city and too many regulations. So instead, he just started driving around the city for free, and that's how the nonprofit organization started. Um, okay, the city wasn't doing enough to punish the taxi drivers that were sexually harassing the women. So that was also a failure, and that is something that the city will always be held accountable for because that is not acceptable and that is never cool. So that is another failure, and that is another like roadblock and obstacle that they ran into. Some successes he had is his organization was a hit right off the bat. Um, he created the Facebook page because he had heard so many stories, like countless stories about women being refused passage or them being made to pay upfront, or them being made to go and do certain things for the taxi drivers that weren't appropriate. And so they just had enough. The women, especially the women, but other people too, they just didn't feel safe. They didn't feel comfortable. They hated these racist taxi drivers. But they're like, there's no other way for like, there's no other transportation. So that's kind of just what they went with. So as soon as he started his organization, they were so grateful that there was a better alternative way to getting around the city and doing the errands they needed to do, that it was like an immediate hit. Like he posts it, and just boom, it just blew up. Okay. Um, Another success he had was when he started doing it. A lot of like the local newspapers heard about his story. They interviewed him, and so this was really good for publicity. This helped get his organization and his website out there. It made it a lot more publicized, so a lot more First Nation people would sign up and they would volunteer to help drive people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and like it blew up so big that he went on like CBC, CNN, one of those big like newspaper sites. So when like I said earlier, when he'd get donations from people, he would just give it straight back into the community. So whenever he'd get donations, unless he needed it to fix one of his cars or to like help pay for gas, because obviously like you have to be at least breaking even for these nonprofit organizations, or else you'll just go into debt. Um, so he would just take enough to keep him going and keep the organization running, and then everything else he just put back into the community. So if he had an extra $10 and he sees a homeless man, go buy him some breakfast, some lunch, some socks, some gloves, underwear, whatever he needed. Um, some Accomplishments he had was he had a bunch of people volunteer to help drive, and not many, but he had some. The city didn't shut down his organization, so that was wicked. Um, yeah, they had a like they had he had a few people get onto like the city board to try and make this like an actual like way bigger organization, but they hadn't done that yet. So some principles I learned from this course that were relatable is in the book How to Change the World. It talks about so many people. I can't remember exactly their names, but there's like the lady with the disabled kid who saw the problem. The problem was the kid. He was disabled, and so she didn't really know what to do. And so she started her own organization with disabled people to learn how to make money and survive, not survive, but like make money and provide while they were disabled. And then there's the other lady who she worked at the hospital. The kids would come in for like with the diseases, they'd get treated and then they'd get sent back out. But then since the environment didn't change at all, the kids didn't get any better, the moms didn't know any better. So then they'd just come back 2 weeks later with a different sickness, get treated, sent out, like, and it just repeat. So then she started the organization to help the mothers, educate the mothers how to feed their kids better and how to take better care of them. And then she also helped um, the mothers get the equipment and supplies they needed to help their injured kids. Um, so some recommendations I have for improving. Um, I would suggest that Parnell Villette, or I don't really know how to say his name, to try and branch out. So he isn't spending the whole day driving people. Like, that's very, very nice. And at the beginning, you'll probably have to do that. But if he branches out, gets more people in, and that's what he had like started to do. But if he really pushed it and was like drivers needed, and he had like 7, 8, 9 cars going throughout the city, then that's 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 people he wouldn't have to drive around the city. And so that just gives him a lot more time to focus on the business side or focus on his family and stuff like that. Okay. I would also just suggest that he figure out his taxi license, because then he can charge a little bit for his services and help, and that would help cover gas and repairs, and then it also help him grow his business a little bit and get more cars so he can more people can volunteer, etc., etc. Scaling his business. So I would suggest that he use crowdfunding because it is the easiest way to get money. Um, they're helping moms and they're helping people in the community. Um, and so crowdfunding, I don't know if you know what it is, but basically it's just a bunch of people just donating and pooling their money together, and then boom. And that's a fast, easy way to get capital, and that will help his business like skyrocket and like double, triple, quadruple, and then pretty soon he'll be able to cover the whole city and just like instead of just sections of it. Um, that is my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it.